Welcome to Part 2 of training for new modifications made to CAPS for APS placements, services, and expenditures. In this training, we will demonstrate how to enter placements with cost. First, let's do a quick review. CAPS has a new tab where you will find most of the new modifications for APS. The tab is called the Placement, Services, Payments tab, which is abbreviated as you see on this slide. The new tab contains 4 subtabs. The first one is the Placement subtab. Second is the Services subtab. Third is the Level of Care subtab. And fourth is the P-Card subtab. Notice that the bottom of the Placement and Services subtabs have fields to show how much money we estimate we're spending on this adult. Additional costs such as food, clothing, and prescriptions, the total we have paid so far for placements and services, and the level of care also appear on this screen. A total amount for all entries that have a cost associated with them will show here. Now we will add a placement with cost. Click on the Placement subtab and click Update in the upper right corner of the screen to begin. Next, click the Add button in the lower right corner of the screen. The Add APS Placement screen will appear with 2 drop-down options for the type of placement. I selected Placements with Cost for this demonstration. A list of placements with cost appears that includes assisted living CRCF, boarding home, community care home, DDSM placement, hotel motel, nursing home, physical rehab facility, and other placement. First, enter the start date for the placement and an estimated end date. The estimated end date is required to compute the estimated cost APS will spend on this adult's case. The estimated end date can be the date you think the adult will leave a placement, a motel for example, or the date you think Medicaid will start for the other types of placements. I checked the box beside Hotel Motel for this example. Next, I click the search button to see if the motel where the adult is placed is already entered in CAPS. The provider search screen appears because CAPS considers all placement types as providers. I entered the name of the motel and clicked the search button in the upper right corner of the screen. All motels with this name appear in the grid at the bottom of the screen. Be descriptive when you enter a provider name so that it's easy to locate. For example, include the location of the motel as shown in the last entry here, Motel 6, 2 Notch Road. The motel I'm looking for appears in the grid because someone has already entered it in CAPS. I highlighted the motel and I will click the Select button. If the motel did not appear in the grid, it must be entered in CAPS to complete the placement entry. You will click the Create New button to start this process, which was demonstrated in Part 1 of this training. The name of the motel I selected on the previous screen appears in the Provider field on the left side of the screen. The fields outlined in red in the Case Information section at the top of the screen populate from other fields in CAPS where this information was initially entered. You will manually enter the information in the remaining fields on the Case Information section, outlined in red here, just as you do now on the Form 1577 or 35772. The Requested By field is populated with the CAPS user's name who is entering this request. Next, select the funding type. The options for funding type are APS funded, Medicaid, Medicaid OSS, Medicare, self-pay, federal stimulus funds, other, and FOCA. Click on the second tab at the top of the screen, the Placement Services tab. Select the unit type from the options of monthly, hourly, weekly, or daily. Next, enter the unit dollar amount. For example, $80 per day as shown in this example for a motel room. Other placement types are more likely to have monthly or weekly rates. Enter information in the reason for request box like you do now on the form 1577 or 35772. Be very detailed with your reason for request to avoid your request being returned as incomplete. CAPS will calculate the dollar amounts in the estimated daily cost, estimated total cost, and other cost fields. If you forget to click on the Placement Services tab, you will get a message like the one shown here when you click the Submit button. After you complete the fields on both tabs of the screen shown on this slide, select your supervisor's name from the Supervisor drop-down list. Multiple names are listed in case another supervisor is covering your county because of illness, a vacancy, or some other reason. In this example, I'm sending this to myself as the supervisor to show how the process moves forward. This could not happen in the real CAPS world. The Save button will save your work, but it will not submit the request to the supervisor for approval. Click the Submit button when you are finished. You will get the message shown on this slide when you click the Submit button as a reminder to enter any other costs, placements, or services for the adult. Click Cancel to continue entering request, or OK if this is the only request you need to enter. The supervisor will receive an alert notification after the case manager submits the request. The supervisor will click on Alerts at the top of the screen. The alert screen will open. Click on the underlined blue number to take you directly to the case that contains the request. Also, the description field shows this is a placement request, which tells you the request can be found on the Placements tab. The case file opens, but not to the screen where you approve or deny the request. First, the supervisor will make selections from the Recipient and Program Services drop-downs, then click the Placement Services Payments tab. The supervisor will see a list of placements. Highlight the request you want to work with and click the Update button in the top right corner of the screen. Then click the Update button in the lower right corner of the screen. The request screen appears. Review all of the information on the left side of the screen as well as the case information on the right side of the screen. Click the Placement Services tab at the top of the screen and review the placement information. Next, click Authorized or Denied under your name, then enter the date and select the name of your regional director. All regional directors' names are listed here in case someone is covering for your regional director. Then click the Submit button. Remember, the Save button will save your work, but it will not submit the request to your regional director for approval. The regional director will get an alert and open the alert screen. Click on the blue underlined number to go directly to the case that contains the request. Make selections in the Recipient and Program Service drop-down, click the Placement Services Payments tab, highlight the request you want to work with, and click the Update button in the top right corner of the screen. Then click the Update button in the lower right corner of the screen. The request screen appears. Review all of the information on this screen. Then click the Placement Services tab at the top of the screen and review the information in the Placement section. After you have reviewed the request, click the Reviewed box, enter the date, and select the person in the state office you want to send the request to from the Approver drop-down list. The type of request will determine who you send it to. For example, request for emergency funds goes to Dorothy Braveboy, just as they do now using the paper forms. Next, click the Submit button at the bottom of the page. Remember, the Save button will save your work, but it will not submit the request to the state approver for approval. When the state approver receives an alert notification, click on Alerts at the top of the screen, then click the blue underlined number to go directly to the case that contains the request. Make selections from the Recipient and Program Service drop-downs, then click on the Placement Services Payments tab. Click on the entry you want to work in and highlight it, then click the Update button in the upper right corner of the screen. Then click the Update button in the lower right corner of the screen. The request will open. Review all of the information on the tab that opens first, which is the Case Information tab. Then click on the Placement Service tab at the top of the screen and review the information that was entered. If you want to review a paper copy, click the Generate 1577 button or Generate 35772 button in the lower left corner of the screen. A PDF document will appear that you can print by clicking the green button in the upper left corner of the screen. This document is for the convenience of the approver. It doesn't have to be printed. All of the information on the form is also in the request screens we just looked at in CAPS. The approver will make a selection in the Action field from the three options shown here: approved, incomplete, or denied. If the decision is incomplete or denied, a reason is required in the comments section from the state approver. A possible reason a request could be marked incomplete is missing information in a field that the case manager must enter manually, such as bank account or insurance information. Missing information that is populated from other fields in CAPS, such as Medicaid information, could also cause the request to be marked incomplete. When a case manager receives email notification that the request is incomplete, there are two possible actions that we will discuss next. After selecting an action, the approver will enter the date and click the Submit button. The first action a case manager can take is only a temporary process until the second action is added to CAPS. For now, find the entry in the Placement or Services tab that has a status of incomplete when you get an email notification that a request was returned to you as incomplete. Click on the entry in the grid to highlight it and click the Update button in the upper right corner of the screen. Next, click the Void button in the lower right corner of the screen. Answer yes to the question on this screen and enter a new request with the missing information. We realize this isn't the most efficient process, but CAPS will add an easier process in the next few weeks that is described on the next slide. The second process for incomplete request is not in CAPS yet. Once you receive notification that it is, highlight the request with a status of incomplete and click the Update button in the lower right corner of the screen instead of the Void button. Enter the missing information in the request screen. Check the Case Information and Placement Service tabs for missing information. Remember that you must enter missing SSI, SSA, Medicaid, and Medicare information on the Medical Administration tab of the Person screen for it to populate into the Request screen. Currently, all fields on this screen are grayed out and you cannot make changes. Once CAPS makes the change to open these fields for incomplete requests, you will follow the second process and then submit the request again for review. This screen shows an example of an approval email. It contains the same verbiage as the email Dorothy Brayboy sends now for approved emergency fund requests. Notice that the request now shows in the grid as approved. Also, the estimated cost fields at the bottom of the Placement Service Payment screen will update when the request is approved. Finally, click the Commit button in the upper right corner of the screen when you have finished working with the request. Thank you for your time today. Please continue this CAPS training with Part 3, Entering Service Request.